Is this thing on? Can you all hear me fine? Okay, hi everyone. A very, very good evening to all of you. It's lovely to see how many of you have shown up today, despite the fact that there's a very happening concert in town today. But let's get started. I loved the theme of today's TEDx, and it was all about the sands of time. And I thought when we talk about the sands of time, what I really would love to share with you is, of course, the changing roles of women with this new sands of time. And when we talk about that, I'll talk a little bit about how the changing roles of women are evolving in the world, and also how I'm seeing it personally in my own family. So, as you all know, there's a big change that is happening in the workplace. You know, in the 19th and 20th centuries, we had the industrial era. And with the industrial era, work had a lot to do with physical power. And that is something that men possessed more than women, and that is why you saw less women in the workplace. Also, with assembly lines, you know, there were fixed boundaries around where you can work, when you can work, and the time and place of work was very, very well defined. Then came the information era, which happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, with the information era, suddenly it became less about physical power and more about intellectual power, which, of course, women possessed in bountiful. Also, with that, a lot of the boundaries around time and location of the workplace started becoming more flexible. And this was, of course, something that the pandemic really pushed workplaces to be. Today, where we are moving towards the intelligence era. And with the intelligence era, as AI, deep tech, machine learning take over our lives, it's actually going to become about human power. And that human power, compared to what robots can do, will be defined not just by IQ, but also EQ. It will also be defined by what life experiences teach you. For example, empathy, entertainment, exploration. These are all areas where humans will always win over robots, and definitely something that women possess hugely, thanks to the life experiences that they bring to the table. Also, with the intelligence era, there are completely no boundaries in terms of where you work and when you work. Now, this change is going to be the most pronounced in India because today we have only 32% of women who are working in the Indian workforce. This, by the way, has increased from 20% in 2015. But it's obvious that we have a long way to go when you look at the fact that in China, 60% of women work, and in the US, 55% of women work. In India also, 80% of men are in the active workplace. Now, if we can get more and more women to get back to the workplace, there's an estimate that we can increase our GDP by $2.9 trillion, and thus be the biggest driver of the Indian economy. Now, this shift is something that I have witnessed in my own family. My grandmother, Gayatri Devi Madhav Prasad Goenka, was born in the 1930s in West Bengal. And even though she went to school for quite a few years of her life, when she was 16, she got married. Her big way of getting married was that she had to pass a cooking test in which she was locked up with no help and had to make a meal for 50 people. I'm pretty sure nobody in the audience thinks that they'll be able to do that. Definitely not me. Soon after she got married, she started her child-rearing process, and she ended up having 5 children. Not only did she have 5 children, she also had 5 sisters-in-law who were also being born after she got married and whose care she was entrusted with. Her entire life was spent in taking care of her family, her extended family, managing the household, managing family relationships. And even though she was a legendary cook, in fact, anyone who has tasted my grandmother's gulab jamuns and cham-chams know that they were the best in the world, she only made it for her own family and never for sale. My mom, Sushma Anand Jain, she was born in the 1950s and born in Bankura in West Bengal. Always very, very talented. And when she moved to Bombay when she was in high school, she wanted to pursue a degree in art. However, her parents were very insistent that she has to pursue an undergraduate college degree. And the main driver of that was because only if you have a good college degree can you get a good husband. Not necessarily a good job was not so important. So she did. She pursued a undergraduate commerce degree. At the same time, she pursued a degree in the arts. And even before she could graduate, she met my father through the arranged marriage route and got engaged and married shortly thereafter. Now, even after getting married, she did continue her art. But of course, my brother and I were born, and she decided to devote all her time and attention and her energies to bringing us up. Again, big joint families, maintaining all the family relations, big social obligations, did all of that fabulously, was always the perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect daughter-in-law, and continued to paint, but all her amazing masterpieces that she made was always to adorn the walls of family homes and offices and never for sale. And then came me, born in the 1980s in Bombay. I had a younger brother, and growing up, I actually didn't know that there was a difference between a boy and a girl, because my parents had the exact same ambitions for both of us. They wanted us to excel academically, they wanted us to excel in our extracurriculars, they wanted us to get into a fabulous college, they wanted us to build a very successful career and build a very successful and loving family. And so, thanks to them, I became the first woman in my family to be sent abroad to study. All the girls before me, it was unthinkable that they would be allowed to go abroad to study. Right after I graduated, I was the first girl in the family to start my own business, and that was an educational center, Paragon, to bring the advanced placement program to India. Soon after I got married and moved to Bangalore, without a second thought, I started working right after I got married, and I joined my husband's family business, which was Kemwell. Again, the first girl in my family to start working a week after her honeymoon. And then a baby gave birth to a mother. And now I was not the first woman in my family to drop everything else when I became a mom and focus all my attentions on my firstborn, right there. And it was because when that new life came into my arms, I felt that nothing else was more important. And I think it was the weight of all those generations before me and all those societal and family expectations around me that I felt that if I continue working, I will be the most unthinkable thing, which is a bad mother. And so I stopped working, did that for 3.5 years, and that's when my second one came along. They say that, whenever a new life comes in, it changes the lives of those around it. And that's exactly what happened. For the first time, after 3 years, I was forced to shift my attention from my firstborn to anything else. And I realized that the heavens didn't fall down. In fact, it ended up being great for my firstborn to not have a helicopter mother hovering around him. And it made him grow stronger, more independent, and made his relationships with other family members, including his father, also grow. Also, second time around, motherhood is not as difficult. When your second baby cries, you're not as upset and worried. And I also started realizing that over these 3.5 years, even though motherhood had been extremely physically and emotionally fulfilling, it wasn't intellectually fulfilling at all. And one day came when I realized that if I wanted to really be a happy mother, I had to be a happy person. And for that, I needed to get back to work. And so for the sanity of my husband and children and for all those around me, I decided to get back to work. And so I became the first woman in my family to start working again, even though my children were really, really little. Now that journey of getting back to work was so rewarding and so positive that I started asking all the women around me that, hey, why aren't you getting back to work? My friends were lawyers, MBAs, architects, engineers, and everyone had stopped working after having kids. And when they started sharing all the problems that they were facing in restarting their careers, I felt somebody's got to do something about it, and so why shouldn't I? And that's when I decided to found HerKey, which was then called Jobs for Her. The whole idea was to make sure that this talent pool of incredible women who are educated, qualified, have a fire in their bellies to prove themselves, find their place back in the workplace, and be able to contribute to the family, to the society, to the economy, and also for themselves. That journey continued the journey of FIRST, and in 2018, I became the first woman in the family to be listed on Forbes. Now, during this journey, it has been very interesting to see what has been holding women back in gaining their rightful place in the workplace. First and foremost, what we have realized is that still continues to be a huge amount of gender bias when it comes to opening up opportunities for women. There are still enough companies and enough people who feel that particular jobs are not suitable for women and only some type of jobs are suitable for them. Also, given the fact that the average working person in the workplace today is a male, most workplace policies, programs, initiatives, culture, evaluations are all built around the default male. And they don't take into account what are the needs and capabilities of women. To add to that, women in India are paid at least 33% lower than men. And this wage pay gap is something that starts eating at them as they try to progress in their careers. Besides for this, women handle 80% of the caretaking responsibilities in India. And so there is a constant struggle between handling your work responsibilities and other responsibilities. And given the fact that after your first shift, you have to run back to a second shift, there is no time to invest your time, money, or effort in updating your skills. Also, given the different pauses that we have in our career, different breaks that we have, our skills start becoming outdated, and that further leads to a lower confidence that women have when they're in the workplace or trying to get in. All of this is also stemming from the fact that we are all used to supporting men's careers. Families are built around the man having a very, very challenging, all-consuming career, and the woman, if she's working very, very flexibly so that she is making sure that the houses and the families are running fine. And of course, societal expectations. A woman is just not expected from the time when she graduates to the time she gets married, to the time she becomes a mother, to the time when there is a medical emergency in the family. Society and family always expect that that woman will take care of all these life events and not the man. And of course, all of this leads to old boys clubs in organizations, which become very, very difficult for women to break through. And if you can't network, you can't grow in your career. In effect, this leads to the fact that only 20% of women even start working after graduating. 50% of them drop out within 3 years, and then only 10% end up rising to leadership roles in India. After having worked with about 5 million women on the HerKey platform, 20,000 employers on the HerKey platform, we've realized that we need a three-pronged approach if we really want to solve for this. First and foremost, we need to make sure that every job is a job for her. We need to ensure that when it comes to learning, women need to be able to train not just in hard skills, but also in how to manage life skills or power skills. And most importantly, we need to change the narrative if we want to change workforce participation. Only if we look at making sure that there are enough opportunities for women, different kind of learning for women, and the kind of community that will support women, only then will we be able to make sure that women are truly engaging with their careers. It was thanks to all these learnings that we managed to not just fuel a lot of restart stories on the platform, but of course, the women around me also managed to find their way back into the workplace. My mom, who, as I mentioned, was always an incredible artist, started her art career on her 60th birthday with her first art exhibition, and now she's a prominent wildlife artist with shows across the world. And my mom's elder sister decided to recently start a food business with my grandmother's recipes, and she now delivers and sells all my grandmother's snacks and delicacies, not just in India, but all across the world. Finally, we've reached a point where we can stop asking that can she have it all and start asking that what can we all do together to create a new all. Thank you.